All right, so now this is video 5. I actually, shoot, do I have video 3 process? I don't think I do. And I'd left off with about how I was severely ill. That my Zyprexa was causing metabolic problems that ended up giving me diabetes. I'd taken some diabetes medication. It hadn't helped really with this problem I had of being tired, at least not enough to make it go away. And I certainly, after that, after the diabetes, started thinking about forming. There were plenty enough times. I mean, as I recollect it, I don't think that there was even, I don't even know if there was any noticeable effect. I mean, I almost want to say that it had to do something because it's a medication to lower your blood sugar and control diabetes. But it was, this tiredness I had was every bit as bad. Jenny has left. And I mentioned to you how, that I deduced that Jenny is Bill's source of info about me, and he tries to indirectly talk to me through her and address these concerns he has. And like I say, I've got a kind of a hostage situation there to an extent where, my office is now at this point, I've already made all kinds of guidelines. I've notated the hell of my accounts, and I did this deliberately because I'm keep trying to make it so that when I leave, my offices have it good. That's a consistent theme of why I was there. I was very, very, very concerned about my offices. I love them to death, and I didn't want to leave, and all that I'd built up, in terms of the rapport, the relationship, the knowledge, all of that to be pissed away, and for them, to be back in square one where they can't get anybody to do shit for them. You can't get quality work, whatever. And so, like I say, Jenny left in July. This pushing out thing kept being, that was my main grievance. These people put me through hell. And it was around, when was it that I seen the neurologist? Might have been in January of 18, but anyhow, the event in question, and let me see here, and I've got a bunch of Facebook accounts, by the way. And part of that is because of this paranoia that I've had over people talking shit about me, that I will close my accounts down. Let me just log into this here. But Jenny and I, as I said, we continued to talk. What was... I'll get over here just because, it's stupid, but you're the only person that's going to see this, I'm sure, but I just... They block out my password anyways, but... And by the way, when you see I've got 2 screens on my, I've got 2 monitors that I use for my web design development, and so when you see stuff just flip off the screen like that, that's why. This is not, I hate to be paranoid like this about my password. But around the end of November, I had told, and let me explain something else, by the way. The whole time I'm at Wells Fargo, the whole time at Bank of America, I am aware of the fact that my life is something that's very, very hard for people to figure out, very, very hard for people to know how to deal with when I tell them, when they learn about some of the things about me. So I've got, this to a lot of people, it sounds like a nightmarish Halloween story, childhood abuse scenario. I've got the being in a mental hospital, which people will pejoratively refer to as a mental institution. That, and of course back home, one of the reasons I believe that people were so apt to believe whatever exaggerated or whatever thing it was that was said about me in relation to mental health is that the hospital in Morganton there, Broughton, is thought of as a place where like people are chained to the wall. Like this is the real, like it's some kind of Hannibal Lecter or a Norman Bates type of place. The reason I know this is, I was growing up there all the time. You hear this, people talk about it. And plus, when we were in school and we go on field trips, and we would pass that, the other kids would we'd talk about it. They'd point it out and say, that's Broughton, that's for those, and that was kind of the clear sense of the kind of place that this was. And obviously, these kids that are, 9, 10, 11, however old, they didn't come up with this on their own. they've heard this through their parents, and I think that that misperception is kind of wide spread. And then you've got these other, just various, it's kind of odd that I didn't go back to school until I was 26. But it was primarily what was the mental health history, also to an extent my drug use, and then the child abuse that I perceived my life to be something. And also, by the way, I was well aware at this point, I experienced a learning curve, and I realized that back when I was in the mountains, that my behavior, so I'll take responsibility, my behavior was unwise, and that I certainly made some mistakes in the way that I behaved that are, more or less inexcusable. That it rubbed people the wrong. Like I say, I would lie occasionally. Overall, was truthful, but I even lie to my friends. About money matters and so on and so forth. I got in fights with people. I could be a little too self-centered, I do believe, at times. Although there were plenty of offsetting times where I was less self-centered. It was disrespectful of me as hell. Some of the stuff I did at Chris Aldridge's pool hall, like smoking marijuana in his parking lot, which of course everybody, plenty of other people did that, and he would joke about it to them, and they called it getting your pool eyes on. And so, these kids come in there, and Chris said, "You got your pool eyes on?" And then, of course, we drank beer out there and throw an outburst. And it's supposed to be a family-oriented place. And there were times I would gamble in there as a young man and throw an absolute fit that people would have to go and apologize. They'd say there's something wrong with this kid or whatever. It wasn't a good thing for me to be spilling the beans about Steve's personal, his business affairs. That's a no-no. When I worked for him, again, I was 15 when I was told this, and not much older than that when I said it. That I was too much of a blabbermouth. So those were things that were, that are kind of a shot at me. Those are chinks in my armor, things that you can, point out to me as being, quite less than perfect. And also, obviously, breaking the law. I used drugs, for a period of time there. I was selling drugs in a very small amount, which of course, I kind of exaggerated when I lived there to some of my friends and some people because I thought it was kind of cool. And, I always wanted to kind of portray a good image of myself, um, you know. And so that was one of the ways I did it was I would kind of make myself to be a little more, I want to put some of them streetwise and I'm a hustler or whatever. In reality, my, wheeling and dealing was nominal, and I didn't make any significant amount of money. I'd say the whole time I was doing it, I would be surprised if I even made $500. And like I said, I can't remember the time period, but it might have been 3, 4, 5 months at the most. Um, so and of course, I can have mercy on some of these people. Especially when I flip out, I don't understand mental illness. I've got this situation where, I'm hallucinating that this guy's a cop when in fact he is a cop. And so, and obviously, I create the situation for my, when I threaten to burn down Chris Aldridge's business, I tell him I'm on drugs, throwing a fit. That's a perfectly fine, reaction to call and be concerned about that. And had I not been using drugs, there would have been nothing for, these people to be getting on me about. Now, in terms of me telling Junior Puckett this stuff, that I don't know what to say about that because there was I had nothing, absolutely nothing to gain. I was totally as far away from reality as I believe somebody can get. The only thing I was missing was any kind of profound visual hallucinations. I don't remember having visual hallucinations at all, actually, during the day or night or anything. Although I would have times where I would quote unquote remember stuff that may be questionable that if it even happened. So I would I'd be putting these conspiracy theories together in my mind, and I'd have events pop up in my mind of conversations and stuff that I've had that for some reason I hadn't remembered them on an ongoing basis. And I do believe it's possible that some of these were just manufactured, by my illness. Largely, though, I had been very, very socially naive. I had given all these people that had something against me all the ammo that they needed to to run me into the ground. Looking back, it was not a smart thing to openly talk about having a mental health history. It was not a smart thing to, I would even describe it. Sometimes Chris Aldridge would be talking about it, and we, I'd say, well, yeah, I'm back there in the loony bin. I'd say it joking. When people hear you say this stuff, it causes them to have, they kind of have a belittling look on you. You're not to be taken seriously. Had I have said something to Steve, I'd say there's a good, somewhere near a 40%, 30%, 50% chance I said, hey, this is none of people's business. The law says you can't do this. He may well have did something to stop it. I don't know, because that's the thing is, even though if I stop talking about it, it doesn't help me if they don't stop talking about it. This self-diagnosing myself as a psychopath and then telling people that I'm a psychopath was extremely stupid. And like I say, this was repeated. I'm fairly certain by some of these people. Again, and of course, the thing was when I did the self-diagnosis back at Spanky's, and I think I told the people at the pool hall too. They would all tell me that that's not how you are. Like you're taking normal human experiences, such as aggression, and making yourself to be at a bad part. Like this one guy told me, he said, Clint, you say you want to do this violent stuff, you get mad at people, feel like killing them or whatever. Says, the other day, some guy made me mad, and I was thinking, man, I'd throw a knife at his throat, or some such thing he was saying that basically they could see that I was totally off base. And of course, the obvious giveaway, is if I'm a psychopath and I'm this, and I've got this social artifice insight into how people work, and I'm out to exploit them, then by default, I'm not going to tell them I'm a psychopath, knowing full well, the implications of how people are going to see that in their mind. And of course, another thing was when I originally started this investigation into my, it was an offshoot of, like I said, I had this delusion before I went to the hospital that came about due to this guy. At the time I was having my break from reality, had this college textbook about serial killers. I had that delusion. Then I get out and I start reading. And the last book that I remember reading was when I was 15. My grandfather had this true crime novel. And so I really liked it. And so I started buying obsessively these serial killer books. And I would buy buy them online, buy them used, and it was kind of almost exclusively what I read about for a while. And I wanted to make a serial killer website. I even said one time that I was going to make a serial killer themed restaurant. I told Steve and some other people there that, I believe, which was nonsense. I would say this ridiculous stuff about, hey, this is my favorite serial killer. This doesn't. This is kind of nutty for people to hear. And I remember one of the police officers saw one of these novels I had, and might have made some comment to one of the employees, that this guy's, there's something up with him. Speaking of all that, lost some train of thought briefly there. But what I was getting to was when I first started this investigation into my perceived mental state, or my perceived personality trait disorder, psychopathy, antisocial, sociopathy, whatever. I had some legit reasons, just from what I knew, because I was engaged in risk-taking behavior as a teenager, which again, at this time, like I said, this is around the time I was 21. It would be in our therapy notes down there at New River, I'm sure, because we talked about this. So it's not like that we're reflecting on my experience in any recent time where I was an adult, but certainly up to that point, you've got this criteria for this antisocial personality disorder, says, risk-taking behavior. Well, I engage in excessive risk-taking behavior, certainly in my teenage years. I forget some of the other ones that we picked on that I picked on this antisocial thing. And you had said at the time that there might be a slight tendency there. Now, with the psychopathy, my dad was manipulative, for sure. I'd known that about him my whole life. He'd been involved in all sorts of crime. I'd heard all this stuff about how child abuse and these types of things can cause people to be off. I'd heard this characterization of psychopaths live in a bubble. That was the thing that they would say about you'd see the psychologist on TV and say there would be some documents that, well, the thing you understand about these people is they live in a bubble. And I'd been perceived by people, and kind of, I think I kind of adopted that perception that I lived in my own world. And to me, that seemed to be basically the equivalent of living in a bubble. And so I thought I had kind of a probable case built up that was something. And actually, and I thought this for years on and off. I remember when I read that true crime book, for some reason, it's some kind of like, uh, you have this Barnum effect where people say stuff and you think it's true about you, but it's really true about everyone. It was something similar to that, where it was like this self-selection, almost unconscious thing, where they would give some trait. And of course, anyone that's lived 15, 16, or however many, 20 years, you've had all sorts of feelings, all sorts of behaviors, thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of thoughts. And so if you have some behavior, you can think of examples. Of course, obviously, I can't think of an example myself cutting a cat open and cutting a dog open and taking off its head, or or some kidnapping, or any of this nonsense. But certain more benign behaviors, that they would say is part of these people. Where there was one of them where said that this guy knew how to tell people what they wanted to hear, and that kind of resonated with me. And like I say, I mean, you can any of these. So the actual the criminal acts, and some of the extreme sadism, and the torture and abuse of animals, all this stuff. I can't find any examples of that. I can think of periods of time where I've played with fire, but I wouldn't consider myself obsessed. But that sounded reasonable. And then all these other behaviors that are kind of that when they're pervasive and they're consistent over time, I could think of examples in my own life. And so I got this book by this psychologist named Reed Malloy, which you had recommended to me. Now this book was way over my head. I did understand some of it, but it was written in terms of object relations psychology, which uses some very uses technical language that's kind of some kind of exotic to me, that I couldn't piece together the full picture as to what this was talking about. And that was what I had when I performed the self-diagnosis on myself. Now, I'd had this perception that, like I'd read before about, like people talking about, some guy goes to the judge and they say, hey, you're a sociopath. And that's not a bad thing, because I've had sociopathic lawyers, sociopathic, whatever, that they're successful in life, they have a job, whatever. And so I had this idea that it was possible to be a psychopath and also be a good person, that maybe, it was just some of these people deviate into really bad, behavior, self-centeredness, excessively, all this other stuff. And actually, after that, I got this book by Herbie Cleckley, which was more straightforward. Didn't fully make sense to me yet. But the big one that I got was this book called Without Conscience by Robert Hare. Now this was the first book that I've gotten that wasn't written specifically with people with a pre-existing sophisticated technical understanding of, so like I say, some of this obscure object relation psychology, or some of this Cleckley guy stuff, which is also very old. It was a little more understandable, but he used some terminology that I didn't fully get. But this Robert Hare, it was it's for the lay public, and so he put it in very uncertain terms. That as I'm reading this, I realize that no, there's no such thing as a person who you would call a good person. There are examples of people who don't cross over into criminality. But there are numerous ways to rip people off and to screw the world over, and to have this asymmetrical relationship with the world, where you have all the benefits of your interactions. They tend to be it's like a 90-10 split, or a 95-5 split. Where we're a social species. The kind of person you're looking for is someone that's a tit for tat. And these people, as a rule, almost always, without exception, behave in a not tit for tat way, that they get the lion's share of the benefit of every relationship they're in. without concern for what it does to the other person. That I've begun to see, like, no, this can't, this can't be me. And it was after reading that book, and I think I'd read it a few times by the time I started, like, no, this is not me at all. And of course, there was also, like I say, you had already done an analysis, and it was a quick, 5 minute, the time that I'd self-diagnosed myself, and we have this list of I think it was like 20 check boxes that you could score either a one or a two. And of course, on all of these, I'm giving myself almost all of them giving a one or a two, and most of them giving a two. And I come up like, I've got a score of 35. And the cutoff is 30. So I definitely the cutoff, and I'm towards the top. And you had, as I was saying those, you had checked off the ones that you thought, and you came up. It was whatever it was to barely meet the cutoff for what they called. Now the thing is the actual, the diagnosis as it's defined by that checklist. There is it's a binary. Okay, so you're either above 30 and you are, or you're below 30 and you're not. But the Reed Malloy, who had written that book, said, "I propose that we think of it this way: that somebody with a score of over this is on the mild range, has a mild psychopathic disturbance." He said, "Somebody who scores over this has a moderate, and then once you pass this 30, that this is severe." I can't remember for some reason I was either 12 or 18. I don't know why those two numbers come to mind, but it was one of those two. And again, we didn't do a full, now to do this. I mean, obviously, I'm kind of regurgitating stuff you probably know, but the way you actually do an examination like this is you talk to all the family members, you talk to the friends, you have a critical analysis, you gather information from all kinds of places. It's not something where you just check off boxes in 5 minutes. And of course, your point was just to say, okay, here's what I got. Like I said, you told me I was self-diagnosing myself with cancer. Whatever it was, that we had just enough to have the mild range. And I kind of accepted that. And then later on, I again started to think I might have this. And then, like I say, once I bought that book and read it, it took me a couple times reading it and reflecting it. I was like, okay, this is not me. And of course, since then, I've started to realize things that that people do correctly perceive me as living in my own world, but that's because I have autism. I'm eccentric as a result of that and some other personality traits I have. Like I've never cared a great deal about what I don't say I don't care what others think, but I'm a nonconformist. That I don't use other people as a reference, for what I do. And this trait of like I'd say, I'd written this book about how this serial killer had this magic ability to tell everybody exactly what they wanted to hear. Well, that's not exclusive, to people like that. It can also be people that come from homes where there's an alcoholic, and you learn by example not to tell these people what they don't want to hear. There's this trait that I think I have, or it's a spectrum called high self-monitoring, where like you're Barack Obama and you're speaking to atheists, and you're kind of criticizing Christianity in kind of a socially acceptable way. Say, hey, if they're going to teach Christianity in school, or they're going to teach creationism in school, what version are they going to teach, and all this stuff. There's something I observed about him, that he seemed to have a way of talking to people and seeing himself as portraying himself as an ally, who someone was on their side, who shared their beliefs, who shared their values. But if you got all of these people in the same room, it would be like a bloodbath. So these fundamentalist Christians and these other more moderate Christians, even maybe that he's talking to, would not do well in a room full of a bunch of atheists that are concerned about evolutionary curriculum being taken out of the schools. And then the Muslims, he talks to them and talks about the Holy Quran and all the peace and all this, and so I kind of reflected, like, that I think I have some of that too. It's hard for me to parse out what is due to, like I say, this kind of people pleasing, afraid to make people mad trait that I had to a large degree then, and maybe still slightly have now, and this, not liking to tell people what they don't want to hear, and then this, being aware of when you're offending somebody, or when you're kind of offsetting their sensibility, and not liking to lose a rapport that you have with someone, because if you're talking about something like politics and religion, you can be the best somebody's best friend on earth. You just meet them and they think you're the greatest, and then you say something about abortion or some of this stuff, and if your views are contrary to theirs, it's like you set off this thing like boom, you're pegged as a arch enemy. And so and then actually I started to offset this in myself once I observed it. I started to think that I was being very disingenuous, and that I was not being bold in terms of having my views known and being clear about them, and that I wouldn't be, not necessarily that I would say things that I didn't believe, but I wouldn't be open enough, or I would say things in a way that would lead others to have a perception that, that say they're for abortion, or so they're against abortion, and I have beliefs that that in certain cases it's right, and maybe in all cases, but for sure as hell I'm not against it, as they are. That the way I say things, I would try to find some point of agreement. So I'd say, and this is a genuine belief I have. I say, well, what gets me about Planned Parenthood is they try to pass this off that this is just a medical procedure, like getting your tonsils taken out or something, that doesn't have a profound emotional impact on the person who's doing it, who's getting operated on. And I would kind of, like I say, it was like I was trying not to lie, but I didn't want to offend this person, and I wanted to kind of have a rapport with them, maintain that. But it could very easily leave the perception that, hey, this is someone that, he would be in a pro-life movement of me and say, rape, incest, none of that. We don't kill babies for nothing, this type of mentality. So what I started doing is on Facebook, I would be openly posting about all my views, about how I feel about religion, about how I feel about gay rights, about how I feel about all these controversial issues, and I ended up pissing off a lot of people. Was the result of that, because of the place that I come from, that most people hold views that are quite in conflict to a lot of mine. But to get back to that, so back to the trade of what am I responsible for, what I'm not. That was very unwise to do that, and it was mostly a socially naive type of thing where I didn't know any better to tell people this garbage, and I had all kinds of interpersonal type of quirks that I had to work out to be someone. Like I said, I was. It's funny that I perceived myself as a manipulator and that I play games with people, but it was in reality I was being manipulated endlessly by all sorts of people, and bullied as well. But by people like Derek Roberts and these people. And so that's something that sticks out as an irony. But but when you're someone like me, and you have, living back there, and you have jobs that aren't that glamorous, the only professional thing I'd been into up there was real estate. Other than that, people don't typically hold people that work in a gas station at too high a regard, overall. Certainly not washing dishes at a pizza restaurant, being a cashier at a pizza restaurant, having, this other stuff. That these are things that people in their mind think of lower status people. And so here I'm in a bar, or I'm in a restaurant or wherever, and there's a bunch of guys, and they're all over this hot, they want this hot girl, and they're thinking, oh man, look at her, thinking of what they can say, and maybe, a lot of times they've been trying to get this girl to go out with them for, however long, and they've got the big muscles, and they've got the big job, and they got a nice car. And then I come in and I go and I start talking to her. She's all giddy as hell, happy as hell to see me. Is making deliberate efforts to come talk to me. Comes over and hands me her phone the first thing she sees me. This triggers a response like, this is too much of an injustice. And these people, they just become ruthless. And that's why I don't think that any of these people believed any of this garbage they were saying. Like I say, for sure, the people at Spanky's did not. They would tell me to quit thinking this shit, to quit saying this shit, but they would encourage me to talk about it when girls were around, and they would do this in direct and indirect ways. And then, of course, as I say, I'm certain through this Megan girl, the interaction that I had there when she was there, that they were deliberately and grossly exaggerating it behind my back. So I don't view myself as, like I said, I don't view myself as responsible at all for spreading this rumor, because I didn't spread it. Had a very limited circle. The people I told, all of them said this was not me, with the exception of maybe Steve, and I don't think he would have told that many people. I mean, apparently, if that was me that he was referring to when he makes this comment about people, if you want to kill children, they give you medicine. If that was me, then maybe he thought that. I don't know for sure. The rest of these guys didn't, and I view it as a deliberate, and it may have even been a planned thing because again, these people despise me. That Chris Aldrich hates me. These people, Spankies hate me, and so it may have even been a deliberate plan where they decided that they were going to spread this and they were going to run me out of this town and make my life hell all they could. Quite possible. That was it. And of course, I guarantee you, I quit going to the pool hall because I could see that Chris Aldrich was scheming against me. He'd gotten the lady that told the lady that I worked with, that worked for up at Scotchman, that had been stealing. And it became more and more clear that all these questions he was asking me was designed to get information to try to see what kind of lies and rumors and how he could screw me over. And there were attempts to get me to come back up there. Like I say, it was clear that he hated me. There was no question of that, but I would see people that, these girls that worked for him behind the counter, I'd see them out at the bars and band around and say, he says he misses you, says, why don't you come see him, or go see him. It was clear that they were being, coaxed to do this by him. So all of that, I left all that behind. Pure hell. All these problems that I had, created partially by myself, and had also given people the ammo to do. I look back, and I thought I've got to be different this time. I've got to start off on the right foot, and I've got to be a little bit more of a team player. I'm not going to play manipulative games with these people and stuff, but I've got to definitely watch what I say about people in terms of their personal business, and not be disparaging people. And I could be easily perceived as kind of two-faced, I think, for especially my teenage years and up to about 20. I worked on that, had that, that I would basically, I reserve my negative feelings for others for when they weren't there. And it's not a good way to be, to talk to someone nice to their face and then to say stuff behind them about their back, and, that you don't address with them. And of course, people, I was talking about that to one of those guys up there later on, and he said, well, we all do that, guys are going to talk shit about you, but whoever's going to do it, I don't want to do it. And so it was like, here, I'm going to do things totally different here. I realize the mistakes that I've made, and I also knew that it was inevitable, or not inevitable, but it was going to be kind of, if I was going to have any kind of relationships up here, if I was going to get to know people closely, that there would be no real way of hiding this from them forever, or not letting them get, some piece of it. And I knew that that if I just told people all this instantly, like, hey, here's this what happened to me when I was a kid, and it sounds totally insane, and I'll say, then, we had this, my mom remarried, and then we had this, and it sounds horrific again, and I used drugs, I was in a mental hospital, all this stuff, it's going to run people away completely forever. That when you hit somebody with all that, all the combined stigma of that, any one of those is enough to scare people away, but all of it for sure, they're done. So what I did, I had this strategy. I wanted, to be able to, at some point, if necessary, if I had close relationships with people that I want to be able to kind of let some of this stuff out, so that I didn't have, to have this whole section of my life hidden. And so what I would do is I would deliberately drop clues. And so one of the first ones I would say is I would be in conversations with people, and I would tell them about how I love psychology, that it's been a big interest of mine. And of course, at this time, I'm 33, 34, 35, so say I'm 35. I'll say, and I've been studying psychology right now in one way or the other for 22 years. Now, these people, they know that I'm 35. They know that I'm overly intelligent, but, this is something that's going to kind of, if they do the math in their head, they say, wait a minute, this guy, he was 13 22 years ago. And maybe in the same conversation or a little later, I would bring it up again, and I would say, and I said I didn't start buying books about it until maybe I was, in my late teens. But I always watched a lot of, anytime a documentary or a talk show was on about psychology, or some of these radio shows, I was all over those, and I really count, when I started studying psychology was about when I was 13, and I started seeing a psychologist my school had assigned me one, and this guy was really really smart, and we would have a lot of conversations, and he was there to help me, but that I learned a lot from them, and that I'd seen psychologists on a regular basis for about 16 years, and that was a big part of my education because I had the benefit of not only reading and talking to them on these radio show or listening to these radio shows, but I had people, PhDs that I could bounce stuff off of, and that sometimes our therapeutic interactions, once I'd reached a certain level of, what would you call it? Adaptability in life, that was high functioning enough that a lot of my therapy would kind of go into, it would just be, we're having a follow up on a monthly follow up. There's no new problem to talk about. I've got these plans; they're on track. I'm not distressed, and so me and my doctors, would just shoot the shit about various different topics, and it was kind of an educational thing where I portrayed it as more and more as time went on. I read these books. It was like almost like I could become an expert like they were in certain respects. And I talk about how I use this knowledge that was a way for me to meet girls when I was younger, or at least learn how to talk to them. Because I'd be the amateur relationship psychologist for all my friends, which I was, from the age of about 15 or 16. I would give these girls relationship advice, and that was one of the ways that I first would be around them and have these really really in-depth talks and relationships and stuff, not romantic relationships but friendships and stuff with girls, where I'd get to kind of learn how they work. I would also mention that how, like if I came in late to work, I would say, I didn't get here until later, so I have a problem where, that my alarm will go off, and if I don't get up right then, and I hit snooze so much that it goes off, I'll end up, I'll go back to sleep, and it would be impossible to get me up, because I have to take medicine. I was hospitalized when I was 18, and I have to take this medicine that makes me sleep a lot. It makes me really really tired in the mornings. And like I say, I would not say this stuff in the same conversation. Typically, it would be we'd be just having with all my work partners, all the people I meet, just be having these kind of normal conversations, interactions. And when it was appropriate to bring something like that up, I would kind of drop little clues, with the medication thing there. People will, like I say, people are always doing the math in their head as to, who is this person, what's going on with him, what's he like, and so they would say, well, wait, I wonder what he was hospitalized, because normally if people have diabetes or they have, whatever illness, they're hospitalized before they're 18. It's kind of odd that you're hospitalized the first time when you're 18. And of course, people get, they get in wrecks or they have some illness they have to be hospitalized, but typically they're not still taking their medication when they're 35. So I know that as I say these things, that people are doing the math, in their heads, and the intention is, and I would also start to mention, that I had a really rough time when I was a kid, and that was one of the reasons that I quit school. I said, I quit school when I was 16, and what had happened was this. I tell people that I had a psychologist that I was talking to, and my mom had a rough time, and I had a rough time with my stepfather living there, and I wanted to quit school, and so that's that. The doctor Ray Powers there. I didn't use his name, I don't think, at that time. But I'd say, he said that, to her surprise, said, go ahead and let him make his own decisions. And I'll talk about how that was a great thing for me because it allowed me to go and make my own decisions, experience the consequences, and as much as if I were an adult, and I had a kid, that I would be in horror over them quitting school at 15. Going back, there's no way in hell that I would ever change if I had the ability. That man, giving my mom that advice, because it was worth millions to me, to be out on my own that early and to start, getting some experience of choices and consequences. So now here with these type of things, I'm starting to slowly, like I say, the way I put it is is I'm not going to put a big ass torch up to the kettle of water so that it explodes and scalds everybody's skin. Um, I'm going to very, very slowly, half a degree centigrade at a time, bring the water to a boil, so that by the time it's already boiling, people have already seen it. Over time, getting a little warmer, getting a little warmer, getting warmer, not enough to notice, and then the steam starts to come up slowly, and people just act like there's nothing going around. So they're starting to think to themselves, okay, first off, they're doing the math. Like, why would you be studying psychology when you're 13? When I was 13, in our school, we didn't have a psychology class. That wasn't until college or later in high school. And and then they'll think, well, and I wonder why would someone's school tell them to go to an outpatient psychologist, and then they say, he said he quit school, because he had problems, so maybe it had something to do with that. And they're putting this stuff together, and so as this stuff, like I say, I can disclose it on my own terms, as I choose to. But when I bring up this stuff about, and I didn't know how much of my childhood, because some of the stuff that happened to me is so bizarre and so out there, that people might not ever be able to get over. What they might not judge me over it, but I had a feeling like they're going to see me, they're going to recall this. I'm going to be associated with this horrific thing I've told them, and they're not going to be able to get out of their mind, and they're not going to want to be around me at all. But even the less, kind of out there stuff was disturbing. But people, I tell them this stuff, and they'll think to themselves, because obviously, you hear this stuff about kids that grow up around domestic violence. They grow up to be violent people. I've heard psychologists will say, this girl will call up on some psychologist and say, well, I've got this boyfriend, and all this happened to them, and they'll say, listen, if somebody doesn't grow up in a loving home, they're not going to grow up to be a loving person, and you need to get away from that guy. It's not worth the risk. But if I say it like this, that, they'll think to themselves, oh, well, that kind of makes sense, because, I'd already thought about, all this stuff, and he told me that they've been going to psychologists for 16 years, and so that must be why, and so he's better. And then when I'm putting this, that I have to take this medicine that makes me sleep. And at one time, I think I did tell some of my people at work that my workplace, by obligation, has to let me come in later because of my medication. So this kind of sets a tone of, that I'm someone who's disabled in some way. That I'm taking this medication, whatever it is, for some kind of disabling condition, which disabling is kind of the opposite of someone that's going to hurt you. So that once again, I could slowly move this in, and then this whole thing with all these people hating me back home, I could get that out of there, because I knew I've got God knows how many hundreds. I mean, I would imagine the times maybe 3,000 people, pretty much the whole damn county minus a handful, have heard this garbage, would spread this garbage the second that they see it. And then there's this thing about, I thought it was horribly unfair, the way that I had all of these girls that liked me, one by one, they had been ran off by this garbage. And over time, I began to see like tainted goods. Like it became more and more conspicuous the more I went out. That, hey, every time we see him, he's never walking in the bar with another girl. And we see him talking to girls all the time. He gets their number, we see that. But it becomes more and more like they get this impression like no girl, would ever want him. And, that this is a guy that doesn't have women in his life. And that is something, that you'll be negatively judged for. And it was kind of me like, I'd like to go back over the past 4 or 5 years and pull off all these beautiful girls and put them in the same room and say, hey, would you like to know, here's this girl right here. You see each other? You guys all had something in common, at one point, and one by one, a bunch of people told you some bad stuff about me, and the common denominator of all these shit-talking people, the big one, they all had a penis. You'll notice that people who don't have a penis don't say bad things about me ever, just as the way that you fucking didn't. Now there were girls that they would tell this stuff to, or that they would say some other kind of unflattering thing about me just going to college like I'm a loser, and that I didn't drive for a while or whatever. By and large, well, actually, pretty much across the board, pretty much across the board, if I meet a girl, there were times that I would weird them out in bars because I didn't, it's kind of a hard setting to interact in, and you don't get to be very in depth with people. It's more superficial. And of course, they're there partying and whatever. So occasionally I would weird them out there, but anytime I saw them subsequently, if I talked to them a little more in a normal conversation, I would win them over. And of course, I won a lot of girls over in bars. Anytime that I had any kind of in-depth interaction with any girl, they liked me a lot. If they didn't have any kind of romantic interest in me, they thought I was an awesome, great guy. Like I say, I worked at Scotchman's. They would come there and say, "Man, the girls would say, it's like, Clint, you're a pimp, man." And the girls come in and waving at me. It was always until some guy says something to these girls. That was always the thing. So I thought that was horribly unfair. I didn't want people to know that. Also, because of my autism, that I was on a kind of a very steep learning curve, and it's going to naturally take me. The lady that diagnosed me, I went to a therapy session with her later on, just one, and she had told me about how that the reason that autistic people have difficulty with social interaction is because that there's wiring present in so-called neurotypical people that is not present in autistic people. So stuff that comes naturally to them, to normal people, we have to kind of apply this same procedural type of doing a math problem, brain wiring to learn how to do that. And so it's like, I was horribly socially naive. I was on a steep learning curve. All of my social failings, count against me, in people's minds. But I don't like the fact that, hey, I've flourished into this very well-developed, educated, kind of diverse, multi-dimensional person with all these interests, all these various talents and things that I've developed. And, like, who is authentically me? Like, I'm a really badass person, and I don't want, the how I failed in the past to count against me. And of course, what I experienced up there was that it didn't matter who the hell I was. So I'm meeting some girl, I know her, and now there were exceptions to this, but I can think of maybe 1, 2, 3 exceptions where the girls would keep talking to me. But I could be the most awesome. They think I'm the best, most coolest guy, have the best things to say about me. Their perceptions, it was also true of some of the guys too, but their perceptions didn't count for shit. Somebody else tells them something else, and 100% of the evidence in front of their eyes, it's been in front of their eyes for minutes, hours, years maybe, in interactions over time that they've seen me, is out the door, and they've been deceived, and I am this rotten, terrible, pathetic, whatever adjective you have about somebody, that if they say I'm evil, okay, well, I'm fooled them. I've come across as a really nice guy that cares about people, that's genuinely interested in his people. Well, fuck, I've fooled them because here's this person that they don't know that somehow knows me, and of course what they say has credibility, their own experience, their own whatever doesn't. And so I fully anticipate, if people hear this stuff, that there's no amount of evidence in front of their eyes forever, that will change anything. But at some time around sometime around the end of November in 2017, two events happened. And I go back and forth in my mind. I used to think that one happened before the other, and now I'm not sure which happened first. But one was I told my good friend at work, Toonie, who loved me to death, that I had people back home who hated me. And this came up I had said something about Facebook, and she said, I didn't know you had a Facebook. And I said, yeah, I have people back home that hate me, and they're on there. Now, at that time, telling her my motive probably would have been that I was wanting to kind of desensitize to some of this stuff. You know, they might eventually, like I say, these people are out there by the droves, eventually going to come to Charlotte, and you know this viral effect where this shit spreads everywhere. And again, major agreements I have is I never have the opportunity to respond. Nobody ever comes to me and says, "Hey, man, you know, so and so told me that you're, you know, whatever this thing is, you know, fill in the fucking blank, whatever you're hearing." You know, I never get, you know, so it's like I'm fucking doomed as soon as anybody says this because there's no fucking prayer of, you know, I never have to put in the word edgewise. It's like, you know, it's never said until I leave the room, and then when I enter the room, it's not said, and then when I leave the room, they say, you know, what the hell. But anyhow, if I'd said that to her, then that would have been my motive. And then the other event is my friend Jenny, who I hung out with after I talked to outside of work frequently on the phone all the time through text messages and also phone calls. Had wanted to send me a picture of her friend Caroline that we've been talking about. This girl was kind of a wreck. We've been talking about her for a while, and I've been giving her some advice, like, hey, you know, like you're overly obligated to people. You have almost maybe it's almost, I said, it's kind of like a codependent thing where you care about people too much, and you need to learn to draw boundaries. And you know, it's not your responsibility to save the world. We'd had this kind of conversation, and so she messaged me one day that she wanted to send me a photo of Caroline to see what she looked like. And she said, and here, I'll send it through your Facebook. Go here, I'll show you. Get this damn. Why was I can't trying to get my messenger up here? Why is messenger currently unavailable? Let me find. Thing. I'm over here on my other monitor looking for my Facebook. Here it is. Okay. Let's see if I can close this off here. Pull this message up here. Close this off here. I'll full screen this. Trying to. Here we go. Because I'm trying to. I don't want. You know, I'm trying to keep some of the other conversations. This is November 30th, 2017. She wants to send me this photo on Facebook. Now, this all happened right around the same time, and I originally thought that this had that the thing with Toonie was first because of, and it's actually because of what happened subsequently. But now I think that it may have been. I'm sorry. How was this? How was yeah? So actually, no. I had it. How was it work? Yeah, no, that was right because trying to think of how I thought this. But anyhow, these two events happened around the exact same time, the end of November. So you can see here. It's November 30th, 2017. Now, this event happened first. It would be because that I was anxious around Toonie that I'd given Jenny the link to my Facebook. Like I say, nobody can find me unless I give them the link. And maybe she's going to end up talking to someone, which again, the only person at the time was this girl named Abby that could be seen on my profile because she'd liked my cover photo. Now, in the first week, immediately after this happens, people start acting different around me. The main one I notice is Toonie has totally shunned, totally ignored, acts like I've got a disease, doesn't want to talk to me, won't say a goddamn thing. She's purposefully avoiding me. And when I say something nice to her, like we had this going away party because she just got another role in the bank. Like she sat way away from me, and I said, Tootie, congratulations. And she had, she just looked at me and kind of looked away. It was like I was being disacknowledged. And like I say, I'd had this experience back home of being stigmatized, and I recognized this behavior instantly. This employee go away thing for her at the restaurant was a little later than November. This happened in November and the first week of December. I first noticed her acting different, and at some point around this time, I called Jenny, and I just had this really bad feeling that somebody said something. It was because of the way that Toonie was acting. And I told her, it was almost like I had a guilty conscience that I told her about how I only had one girlfriend in my entire life. And Jenny just said, yeah, yeah. It was like it was totally not a surprise to her at all. Again, at this point, I'm 36 years old, and the fact that this doesn't, bat an eye, that she has no clarification, is really making me worry. And around the same time, it was other people at work. It was this girl named Tara that was Jenny's and Toonie's friend. This guy named Ryan. That started to again treat me as like this stigmatized person. Like I said, a lot of these people were assigned to do my work, and I would go and I noticed this, and like I believe the thing with Toonie and him happened around the same time. That was in the same day that she had been so dismissive of me at first. And I go to his desk, and I say, "Hey man, how much work can you take?" And he'd never done this before. And he says, "Well, I'm busy." It was like a really disrespectful thing. And again, it would seem like nothing to anyone else, but I am fine fucking tuned to this reaction. Okay? And so I know that it's Abby that said this stuff, because that's the 100% of the people in the world that hate me are on my fucking Facebook. If there's anybody out there, that's what they're going to get. Now Abby had also, she had been someone who was my greatest fan at one point, talked about me like I was the best, and then for about a period of about 3 to 6 months, would not talk to me at all on Facebook. And so I thought that she had heard something. I'd had that thought, but this is before this had happened. I thought, okay, she's obviously heard something bad about me. At the time, I thought it was most likely from her sister, because Abby had moved out of the mountains for a while, and her sister was more in touch with that whole scene. I thought that she was close to those folks, so probably somebody down there said that about me, and it's got back to Abby through her sister. And again, I just thought that she had said something, that asked her about me. They'd say, "Hey, what about Clint? Did you know this guy Clint? We're just curious about him," or something like that. And she had said something, whatever, this horrible thing about me, this mischaracterized thing about my mental health, So I start asking Abby immediately, and it was on December 1st, and I feel very, very stupid for doing this. But later on, I deleted this first conversation that I had with her, the first few lines of it, because it was something that was making me feel bad, making me suspicious, and I was like trying to get it out of my sight, out of my mind. But I messaged her. I said, "Hey Abby, talk to me about anyone lately?" Okay, now here's someone that I'd sent her messages forever that she didn't respond to for a period of months, and Instantly, within seconds, she responds, "No, I don't talk to anybody." And I defriended her on this profile that this is the same profile here that she sent me this picture on. Abby was on here. Or actually, no, I closed this profile down. I hadn't unfriended her. I closed this profile down and started a new profile. So this profile was done because I know here I've got some corrupted information, and she instantly sends me a friend request on my new profile. Okay, so there's some anxiety that all of a sudden, whatever. Okay, and first off, I don't talk to anybody. Sounds like bullshit. And I say, what do you mean you don't talk to anybody? And she says, what was it? She says, I don't have any friends or something like that. And I say, but you say, and I start doing detective work. I look on her wall because she's still on my, she's on, actually, I've accepted friendship on the new profile. And I say, I'm looking on your wall and you're talking about talking to all these. You said, I talked to so and so the other day. And she says, well, these friends, she says, they're work friends. And it's some bullshit explanation about how, the only people she talks to are people at work. So she don't really have friends. It's obvious garbage. Okay, so the next thing that happens is, my friend Katie had moved away, or she left the bank totally for a while. And I've been talking to her on text as well. And I messaged her, and she had this horrible kind of, like I say, it's one of these things when you're stigmatized, the signs are very subtle, but they're very fucking, they're very fucking clear. Even the first time it ever happens to you in your whole life, you get a sense that this person is not treating with me with respect. When you've had this kind of contempt and kind of stuff dealt with you for years, you know it instantly. It fucking hurts the second you see it. You cannot fucking miss it. And I'm talking to her, and it's like, okay, it's fucking clear. I'm goddamn surrounded, just like I was there. Here, hell has come to Charlotte, and it's never fucking leaving. I gotta do something about this. So I call Jenny, and I'm crying like hell. Now, at this point, what I think is because I think that Toonie is the person that has reached out to someone because she had said that she was going to try to find me on Facebook. I'm looking at your phone number, right? Like she was going to be my friend. So I think here's what's happened. Oh yeah, and also no. Now I remember why I thought that the picture was first, because Jenny couldn't find me on Facebook, and I had temporarily set it so that you could find me by my phone number, so that she would be able to get my phone, find me on my Facebook. She still couldn't find me, so I found her and sent her a message. And so I thought that Toonie had found me by my phone number, and because Toonie acted weird when I told her that people had hated me, and that she had saw this girl Abby. So the whole time I think it was Toonie. I didn't think Jenny had shit to do with it at all. And so I call her, and I'm in absolute desperate tears, broke down completely. This is the first time Jenny had ever seen me like this. The whole time she'd known me. And I hadn't been like this in a while. I had other friends that I'd been like this. Like I say, I would throw fits, when I'd have financial problems, and I have this thing where I overreact to emotional pain, which I do believe has to do with all the trauma I've had in the past, that my brain is kind of broken, but this in particular, this has traumatized the hell out of me living in the mountains. This hell couldn't be here. And I think I'd already asked Toonie something about it. Maybe I had, maybe I haven't, or said something. If you talked to someone, I can't remember. But at this time, I'm convinced, it's obvious what's happened. And I called Jenny, and I'm wailing and throwing a fit in tears. And Jenny had always struck me as someone who was very kind and concerned and nurturing with people. And she did everything that she could to comfort me. And I told her that Toonie had heard something, and I don't know who it is, or I might have told her that I thought it was this girl named Abby, or that I thought, there was somebody on my Facebook, and that people back home, say horrible things about me, and I don't even know what it is, but this rumor gets spread everywhere. And at that point, I didn't tell her that this horrifically exaggerated, because I didn't want her to hear that damn shit. Because when people hear, that people used to say that you wanted to kill children, that's why you go to the hospital. the natural human intuition, as flawed as it is, or maybe as not flawed as it is, and maybe this is typical, but I think somebody had to have a reasonable reason for you to say that. But I was told them that somebody said something horrible when they met me at home. I didn't know what it was, and that they lied about me. And this was right around the time of this, close to the time now, which this all happened kind of fast, but it was close to the time that we had this employee party for tuning where she was leaving for the new job. Now, at the end of this call, and again, I'm absolutely destroyed, in tears, completely. Throwing a fit, wailing, talking. I think I'd mentioned about how I wanted to kill myself back home because of this. Actually, I said, will you please just ask Toonie if she's heard something and what she's heard? And Jenny mysteriously says, I don't want to rescue people anymore. She says, I don't want to because I don't want to rescue people anymore. Now, this struck me as extraordinarily bizarre because I'm Jenny's mutual friend. Toonie is Jenny's mutual friend. And why in the hell would she just not ask her? Now, at the time, I am so emotionally devastated that I am not in any condition to contend with anything that Jenny says at all. And I'm extremely, extremely hurt. But it seemed to me to be like this girl knows something. There's some bizarre reason, and it was like, because we've been having this conversation about this Caroline girl, and I told her, you need to stop trying to save people. And this was like a convenient excuse or convenient reason she could give me, given this conversation, not to talk to Toonie. She would not be saving me at all. I had no codependent, leaning on her, obsessive, going suicidal, all this stuff that this girl had. She told me about that she'd had an excessive history, that this girl was always anxious, crying to her about her boyfriend, didn't know how to live her own life, was getting used, was drunk, was whatever, so at this point, me and Jenny had a great relationship. We just talked, we had fun, we'd be funny, and so it would not be like she was doing any extraordinary thing to me at all. And it seemed to me like, whatever reason she doesn't want to do this stuff, this can't be it. And it seemed really, really off. Okay, so I'm going to turn this video off and start another one.